I'm Amy Karanik. Welcome to my home studio. Today I'm going to be making some psychedelic coasters using PREMO and PREMO accents. Let's get started. Alright, first let's talk about the materials that you're going to need to make these fun and functional coasters. Obviously you're going to need some clay, and I'm using PREMO accents and PREMO. My accent colors are the red glitter, purple pearl, blue glitter, bright green pearl, and then in PREMO I'm using yellow and sunshine yellow and orange. I have these all pressed through the clay conditioning machine on the thickest setting and then stacked up. You're also going to need a large piece of a base color. The base of my coasters was done in yellow, and I also made myself a cardstock template that I could use to cut out the shape of my coaster, since it's such an unusual shape. I'll show you that later. For the center cutout of the coaster, I'm using about a 3.5 inch cookie cutter, a circle. Make sure that the circle that you choose is big enough to accommodate glasses, wine glasses, favorite water bottles, whatever you generally serve drinks of from your home. And then I'm also using a smaller cutter, and this is going to help me do some of the trimming that I need to do as I'm building the cutter. You're going to need some basic clay tools, and also you're going to need some cork. This cork was purchased, and you can see it's in thin sheets from one of my local home stores. It's about a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch thick. It cuts easily with scissors, and then it sands easily with a sanding sponge. So you're going to need that for your coasters. Okay, let's get started. What I did first was, like I said, condition this through the pasta machine on the thickest setting, #1 for me, and then I piled that all up, and then I'm just going to start pressing this together, flipping it side to side to increase the size of the area and also to thin each layer. And you just want to keep going with this until you get to about this size. Okay, so where I started was about 2.5 by 2, and now I'm at about 6 inches by 3. So that was quite a big jump just by pressing it with the acrylic roller. Generally in a Mokume Gane, you would cut this now and section it. But what I'm going to do for this project is I'm going to fold this back and forth. Make sure you get the air bubbles out. Sort of an accordion fold. And the reason I'm doing that is because I like to have big areas in here of thick color, and then I also like to have thin areas of thin stripes. So I feel like this technique kind of does that for me when others don't. So now just go ahead and iron this back together. Roll it with your roller. And then we're going to accordion fold it again. Back and forth. And it's kind of this sloppy, you know, this isn't real straight or anything. You've got a lot of wonky edges, and it's kind of the sloppiness of this that is really intriguing to me, and what generally makes Mokume Gane a fun freestyle type of art. So now I'm just pushing on all sides with my hand to get this worked back up into more of a neat shape. And it's time to start distressing this Mokume Gane style. And I'll show you one that I have almost completely done. Here's a bar that I've got almost completely distressed. And what I did was I used a 6mm ball tool to poke these dents in. And I only poked down about halfway through the slab. I did not go all the way through to the other side. Now you can see I have a lot of my holes already filled with some of this blue glitter, so you just want to cut off some small pieces and push those right in. You want to make sure they're thin enough to slide right in. If they're not thin enough to slide in, then you need to roll them out thinner. Okay? And then on the other side, I used the same tool. I poked halfway through the slab, but I filled my holes with a different color plug, and that was the bright green pearl. Now I want to just shape this up by hand and make sure that your clay slab is capturing those plugs in there and that there's not a lot of air trapped all around those. Okay? You can even roll over the top to to give yourself a nice flat starting point. Now I want to slab this up so it's sort of thick because I find that it's easier to slice. So we're ready to take some slices, which will be our veneers for our coaster. And a lot of people, there's a lot of different ways that you can slice this. Some people like to lay the slab down flat and then shave toward themselves. I find it easier to cut down through the slab, so you need to experiment and see what works best for you. When I cut down through a thick slab like this, I usually score myself a little line because sometimes when the clay is real warm, it'll catch on your blade and won't cut smoothly. So I score a little line and then cut down through. And you can see that's at least 1/8 of an inch thick. And there's a really beautiful sort of cosmic looking slice. I love that. And then I'm going to slice from the other side because remember that had the green plugs and that'll give me kind of a different look to play with. So now I've got 2 different sheets to start off with. And before I put these on my coaster base, I'm going to run these through my machine on the thickest setting and then again on the second thickest setting, turning it before I do. So you can see how much that increases the overall sheet size by running it through your pasta machine. Now those are ready to start putting onto the coaster, but I need to back up a second and show you how I made my coaster bases. Remember that template I was telling you about? Well, pull that out and lay it on some sheeted clay, and this is on the thickest setting of my machine. You're going to need a flexible super slicer at this point, and these are so valuable for cutting odd edges. All I have to do is line up my super slicer right with that edge, pull the extra away. You can make basically any shape with these, and it makes such a nice, neat cut. Just bend and push. And one more cut. Perfectly shaped, oddly shaped coaster shape. All right, now I want my biggest, I want my circle cutter that indicates the size of my coaster hole, and so I'm going to put that right there, line it up with the template, and then take the center out. Now I have a perfectly formed base to build my coaster on top of. Okay, so I want to start with a piece like this, and just since these are different sizes, I want to imagine where this would work well, and I'm thinking right here would be really good. I'm actually going to cut this in half down the middle to get some of that excess out of the way, and then I'm going to line this up on the coaster, and I'm even kind of turning this. You know, I like this stripe out here on the edge, so I'm going to pull that in a bit and make sure some of that shows. Okay, and I'm going right around that corner, tapping it down. Okay, now a valuable tip I've learned when playing with odd shapes like this is that it's much easier to line your next piece up to a straight edge. So I'm cutting this off perpendicular to that shape, if you can imagine that. And again here, because it'll be so much easier to snug the next piece of clay up to this one if I have a really nice straight edge. Okay, now I want to start with a piece that has the blue in it, and maybe I'll go up there. And I'm going to cut some of this away, some of this extra clay. I know that a project like this can be frustrating for some people because it seems like there's a lot of wasted clay, but save all those little snippets and scraps because you'll be able to do something fun with that. I know you will. Okay, so here I'm lining up that straight edge to straight edge, making sure they butt together, and then I'm going to pull this on around this direction. Beautiful. Now, because I had already run these through the pasta machine on the thickest setting, I know that these two pieces are exactly the same thickness and they should lay nicely beside each other. So I'm just cutting off this scrap, but don't cut through the base of your coaster, and then lift that little scrap up and set it aside. Okay, Now you want to just continue around piecing this together around the outside edge of your coaster. I'm going to move this one out of the way and show you how to finish one. I have this piece that's almost completely done, and I want to show you how to just go in here and finish it off. So I think I'll start right here with this piece, lining up straight edge to straight edge. I'm going to cut that a little straighter. Make sure your edges really stay down, and then if you want to start pulling this around the corner, it'll be easier to do. Sometimes if you have a lot of excess clay in the middle, you can use this smaller cutter to get rid of some of that, just to kind of get it out of your way so you can think more clearly about the shape that you're making. Trimming off this so it's a nice straight edge, and then I just need one little bit to go right in here. So let me see what I've got that will fit. This piece will just about fit. Now, here's a tip. I'm overlapping right here, so I'm just going to kind of nudge those together. That will help me figure out where to trim. Trim that middle part out. Just tap that together and then peel it back up. And there's a little line on here I can see from where I tapped that. It makes a good guide. And then this should fit snugly right in between. You don't want your pieces to overlap. You just want them to butt right up to each other so it's really, really smooth. Okay? Now just give this whole thing a little roll. Flatten out any fingerprints. Make sure all the pieces are level. Now I'm going to use my favorite spatula. Pull this all up. And I'm going to show you how to finish it. We're going to flip this over, so make sure your area is clean of scraps. All right, now I'm using the cutter that is the size that I want for my finished coaster. I'm setting it right in here, lining that up as best as I can, and then cutting all this extra clay out of the middle. Pull some of that out with my rubber tool there. There we go. Now bring that flexible blade back and just start trimming away the outside edges. Keep all these beautiful scraps. Okay, trim that all out. And one more. Okay, now just gently pull that back up. Now, as I'm going to put this on my baking sheet, I want to make sure, or before I do, I want to make sure this is really not, the sides aren't squashing my circle in. So I'm going to fit my circle back in here and make sure that it still fits. Rub the outside edges with your finger. Just give that a little buff to take off that cut edge look. Now, when I made my coasters, I did put a little trim on the inside because I felt like my bright colors were getting kind of muddled with the cork color. So just pick out some scrap clay and roll out a nice long rope. Fairly thin. And we'll run that around the inside edge. Cut a nice straight starting edge and just lay this in here. You want this to be pretty thin because you don't want to take up too much room from using this. I just love that with the polymer clay you don't have to use adhesives or glues. The stuff just sticks to itself so beautifully. That's one of my favorite things about it. Now I'm going to snug this in here with some finger pressure and make it really hold on to that thin edge of the coaster. Run my finger around the edge. Ooh, that opened up a little bit. Just put it right back together. Run your finger around there to give it a really smooth finish. and buff the seam together with your finger. And that is ready to bake. Okay, now I want to show you what to do after it's baked. When you get your lovely coasters out of the oven, they'll be nice and firm, but you still need the cork backing to make them waterproof. So this was a shape that I had almost cut out all the way before. You can see it fits just like so. I had several coasters that I was doing at once, so when I would take one out of the oven, trace around it, and I would mark each coaster with a number. This one was number 1, and I had a number 1 here on my clay. And then I'll show you how I finished cutting this just with regular scissors right on that line. Okay, and then I found that the coaster itself had a little bit of rough edges on the cork, so I used a soft sanding sponge to just knock off some of that roughness. This was real easy to do. I was so pleased at the way these came out because the cork was so easy to work with. Then all you have to do is line your clay back up, glue that into place with some silicone glue, and you're ready to serve up some stylish and psychedelic drinks.